The fluorescent hum of Mickey's diner was a hostile buzz against Emma's skull, a common torment in these early hours. She stirred her lukewarm coffee, the ritual a shield against the creeping silence of her empty apartment, a silence that had grown too loud since the nightmares began. The red vinyl booths cracked like an old man's skin, the checkered floor that whispered tales of forgotten decades. This was her refuge, far from any postcard, deep in the underbelly of Chicago. Tonight, a different current coursed through the stale air, a prickle against her skin that wasn't just the cold seeping in from the street. Then she saw him, a boy no older than 9, isolated in the furthest booth, his hands a flurry of desperate motion. Emma's gut twisted. He signed for anyone, everyone, the cook, the weary waitress Dolores, even the stumbling drunks heading for the restroom. But each face turned away, a flicker of something close to fear in their eyes. The boy, clad in a navy sweater and khakis that bespoke a tailor, not Macy's, was an island of expensive sorrow. His dark hair was perfect, his eyes, wide and tired, held a sadness that no child should ever carry. Why are they ignoring him? Dolores approached the boy's booth with the practiced reluctance of a woman walking a plank. Her usual gruffness had curdled into something that looked suspiciously like terror. The boy's hands flew faster, urgent. Please, help. Emma watched his little face crumple with frustration as Dolores shook her head, muttering under her breath, backing away as if from a plague. That was enough. 15 years ago, Emma learned ASL with the fierce devotion only a sister can give. Sarah, her deaf younger sister, had taught her the language of connection. Even now, 3 years after Sarah's crash, the signs lived in Emma's hands, a silent promise. She rose, every conversation in the diner dying as she moved. The boy's dark eyes widened as Emma slid into the booth opposite him. Hi there, she signed, her touch light. What's your name? The transformation was absolute. The boy's face bloomed, a fragile light in the dim diner. His hands flew, a torrent of confession she had to slow. My name is Luca, he signed, tears brimming. You can understand me? Yes, Luca. Perfectly. Emma's own throat tightened. Are you okay? Where are your parents? Before he could answer, the diner door exploded inward, ripping the little bell from its hook. 6 men in dark suits flooded the space, their hands tucked, guns implied, not seen. Customers dived, a woman screamed. But it was the 7th man who froze Emma's blood. Tall, broad, perhaps 40, with steel-gray eyes that could cut diamond and a face hewn from granite. His black hair, swept back, caught the buzzing light. His charcoal suit, an armor of wealth, whispered power. He moved, everything bending away from him, like reeds from a storm. This wasn't just danger. This was the apex predator. His gaze swept the room, cold and calculating, until it locked onto their booth. The granite face softened, a flicker Emma couldn't name, relief, fear, longing. When his eyes found Luca, he moved, his expensive shoes clicking a deadly rhythm across the linoleum. Emma's every instinct screamed, run. But Luca's small hand had found hers across the scratched formica, a silent anchor. She couldn't abandon him now, not when he had finally been seen. The man stopped, then knelt beside Luca, his massive frame performing a surprising grace, a gentle hand cupping the boy's cheek. There you are, figlio mio, he rumbled, a velvet-wrapped steel voice, hinting at a distant Italian sun. You scared me, kid. Luca's hands flew, ecstatic, signing to the man. He understands too, Emma realized, a cold wave washing over her. Luca pointed at Emma, his face alight. The man's gray eyes snapped to her, a laser-like focus that dropped the diner's temperature 10 degrees. Emma felt like a butterfly pinned to a board. Exposed, trapped. You, he said, his voice quiet but echoing in the absolute silence. Who are you, and how do you know his language? Emma's mouth was dry. Lie, run. But Luca's hand was warm, trusting, pleading. I'm Emma, she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Emma Chun. I learned sign language from my sister. His eyes never left her. Behind him, his men had sealed every exit. No one was leaving this place without his word. Emma Chun, he repeated, testing the syllables. Chun. An unfamiliar taste on his tongue. Then he smiled, and it was colder, more terrifying than any scowl. I'm Adrienne Russo, and you, Miss Chun, have just become very interesting to me. The silence that followed Adrienne Russo's pronouncement stretched, thin and sharp as a razor wire. Emma's own heartbeat hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. He watched her with the predatory focus of a hawk on its prey. Everyone out, Adrian said, his voice still low, controlled. He didn't raise it, didn't threaten, but the effect was absolute. The cowering customers scrambled for the door, their flight a desperate scramble for air. Dolores dropped her coffee pot, a porcelain shriek on the floor, before bolting for the back exit. Within 30 seconds, the diner was empty. Only Emma, Luca, Adrian, and his 6 silent men remained. Emma noticed how the enforcers kept their eyes from Luca, an unspoken deference, or perhaps something colder. What kind of life is this for a child? Now, Adrian said, sliding into the booth beside Luca with a fluid grace that belied his bulk. Luca gravitated to his father, but his eyes, wide with a fragile hope, remained fixed on Emma. Let's have that conversation properly. Emma's hands trembled, pressing flat against the scratched formica. I told you. I'm Emma Chun. I worked at Morrison Data Services downtown. I learned sign language because my sister Sarah was born deaf. Her voice hitched on Sarah's name, an old wound. Adrian's voice held a dangerous softness. She died 3 years ago, car accident. Emma met his steel-gray gaze. I kept up with signing because I promised her I would. A flicker crossed Adrian's face. Brief, almost imperceptible, but Emma saw it. The granite mask slipped, revealing something raw, human. Luca tugged on his father's sleeve, signing rapidly. Adrian's expression softened further, a paternal tenderness that was jarring on such a brutal face. Here was a man who loved his son with a fierce, dangerous intensity. Tell her, thank you, Luca signed to his father. Tell her she's the first person who talked to me like I'm real. Adrian's jaw tightened. Luca says, you're the first person who's ever treated him like he exists. His voice, usually smooth, now carried the heavy weight of years of silent frustration. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Emma looked at the boy, then back at Adrian. People are idiots, she said flatly. Deafness doesn't make someone less human, neither does being mute. No, Adrian agreed, his eyes locking onto hers. But being my son does. The words hung in the air, a cold confession. Pieces of a horrible puzzle clicked into place. The fear, the avoidance of Luca, the armed men, the tailored suits, the dangerous father. You're Mafia, Emma whispered, the realization a bitter taste. Adrian's smile was sharp as a blade, among other things. He gestured to one of his men with a flick of his wrist. Marco, Bring the car around. We're leaving. Wait, Emma said, panic a cold hand gripping her chest. I should go home. I have work tomorrow. No. Adrian's voice, sharp as ice, cut through her protest. You're coming with us. Emma went to rise, but a silent ballet of tailored suits orchestrated around her, sealing every exit. You can't just kidnap me, she managed, the words catching in her throat like jagged glass. Adrian's gaze, cold as a winter river, bore into her. I'm not kidnapping you, Miss Chen. I'm making you an offer. The words were calm, too calm, like a whispered threat. What kind of offer? Her voice was barely a tremor. Adrienne glanced at Luca. The boy's hands, quick and practiced, were already tracing signs in the air. Is Emma in trouble because of me? No, kid. Adrienne's large hands moved with surprising grace as he signed back. Emma's going to help us. He turned to Emma, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet it roared in the confined space. My son hasn't had a real conversation with anyone in his entire life, except me. And even I'm limited. Basic signing, learned after he was born. His eyes held hers, unwavering. You saw how he lit up when you talked to him. She started to speak, but he rode over her words. Luca trusts no one. In 8 years, he has never trusted a single soul outside of me. Not his bodyguards, not his tutors, not his nannies. Adrian leaned in, his gray eyes boring into hers, a predatory glint within their depths. No one. Until tonight. Until you. Emma's mouth went bone dry. What are you saying? A whiff of expensive cologne, underscored by something darker gun oil, perhaps, or something metallic like blood, reached her as Adrienne leaned closer. I'm saying my son needs you, Miss Chen, and what my son needs, he gets. You can't just take me. The defiance felt flimsy, a whispered hope against a stone wall. Actually, I can. Adrian's voice was velvet wrapped around steel. You see, in my world, when something precious and rare appears, something that could keep my son safe and happy, I don't let it walk away. He stood, extending a hand to Luca, who took it without an eyelash's hesitation. My son trusts no one, Miss Chen. Now, you don't have a choice either. 2 hulking forms materialized, flanking Emma's side of the booth. They made no move, no aggressive gesture, but the message hummed in the air, a silent, irrefutable command. This is insane, Emma whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm a nobody. Data entry, studio apartment, broken AC, ramen noodles, thrift store clothes. I don't belong in your world. Adrienne paused at the diner's door, Luca's small hand still tucked securely in his. He looked back at her, and for a fleeting moment, something akin to regret softened his hardened features. Maybe not, he conceded. But my world just became yours, whether you like it or not. As she was guided gently, but with an unmistakable finality toward the exit, Emma met Luca's gaze. The boy signed repeatedly, with absolute trust and unadulterated joy. Thank you. A chill snaked down Emma's spine. She was being pulled into a current of wealth and danger, a world she could never have imagined, and there was no turning back. The wrought iron gates of the Russo estate groaned open, swallowing their black SUV whole. A Gothic silhouette against the brooding sky, the mansion stood like a stone titan. 3 stories of limestone and dark, unblinking windows, its manicured grounds hinting at impossible fortunes. But it was the subtle details that coiled dread in Emma's gut. Security cameras, like watchful cold eyes, tracked their every move. Men in dark suits, patrolled the perimeter with the practiced efficiency of soldiers. The windows weren't merely tinted. They were bulletproof, thick enough to distort the pale evening light. This wasn't merely a home. It was a fortress, built against a world of unseen enemies. "Welcome to our world," Adrian rumbled, his voice low as they pulled up the circular drive. Luca, peaceful and utterly vulnerable, had fallen asleep against his father's shoulder during the 20-minute drive. The massive oak door swung inward before they even reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s. Her crisp black uniform and rigid posture spoke of unbending discipline. "Mrs. Castellano," Adrienne introduced her, a brief nod. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her pale blue eyes swept over Emma with undisguised disapproval. "This is Miss Chen. She'll be staying with us." "Sir." Mrs. Castellano's voice, accented with a subtle Italian lilt, held no warmth. "The guest room in the East Wing has been prepared." Her gaze flickered to Luca, still asleep in Adrian's arms, and for a split second Emma saw a flicker of something across her stern face. Not affection, but deep, weary resignation mixed with an undercurrent of fear. The foyer was a mausoleum of cold grandeur. Marble floors gleamed beneath the light of a crystal chandelier that shimmered like frozen tears. Oil paintings in heavy gold frames lined the walls, depicting stern-faced men, many bearing a disquieting resemblance to Adrian, their eyes following her with silent judgment. Despite the opulent display, the house felt empty, lifeless. "Maria will show you to your room," Adrian said, a dismissive wave towards Mrs. Castellano. "We'll discuss the arrangements tomorrow." "Wait," Emma said, her voice finding an unexpected surge of strength. "What arrangements? What exactly do you expect me to do here?" Adrian paused at the foot of a grand staircase, Luca still cradled in his arms. "Help my son," he said, his voice flat, final. "Give him what everyone else in this house has failed to provide, a childhood." The words struck Emma with the force of a physical blow. As Adrian carried Luca up the sweeping stairs, Emma followed Mrs. Castellano through cavernous hallways. More security cameras watched from shadowed corners. More silent, watchful men lined their path. Everyone averted their eyes, yet Emma felt the prickle of their curiosity, their fear, emanating from them like a palpable heat. "The boss doesn't usually bring strangers home," Mrs. Castellano finally said, her voice tight, as they ascended to the second floor. "You mean Adrienne?" The housekeeper's steps faltered, almost imperceptibly. "I mean Master Luca, miss. He's particular about people, doesn't take to anyone. Most of the staff find him—" She searched for the right word, her lips thin. "Difficult." Emma stopped. "Difficult? How?" Mrs. Castellano's face became a mask. "Nothing for you to worry about, miss. Here's your room." She pushed open a door to reveal a bedroom larger than Emma's entire apartment, decorated in muted blues and whites, with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum exhibit. "Mrs. Castellano," Emma pressed, before the woman could retreat. "How long has Luca lived like this, surrounded by people who are afraid of him?" The housekeeper's knuckles went white as she gripped the door handle. "That boy is Mr. Russo's heir, miss. Everything he touches turns dangerous, whether he means it to or not. We, the staff, we do our jobs. We keep him safe, but getting close to him—" She shook her head, the unspoken words heavy in the air. "That's not safe for anyone." After Mrs. Castellanos' stiff departure, Emma sat on the edge of the impossibly soft bed, the silence of the vast room oppressive. Through her window, guards moved with choreographed precision across the grounds, like figures in a lethal ballet. What kind of life is this for a little boy? An hour later, a soft tapping at her door broke the spell. Luca stood in the hallway, his dark hair tousled, wearing Superman pajamas. I couldn't sleep, he signed, his small hands a flurry of motion. Can we talk? Emma glanced down the empty corridor, then stepped aside. Of course. Are you okay? Luca perched on a chair far too large for him, his legs swinging freely, a picture of small, forlorn innocence. Everyone here is scared of me. He signed, his movements infused with a practiced sadness. They do things for me, but they never talk to me. Not really. They look at me like I'm... He struggled for the right signs, his brow furrowed. Like I'm broken. Emma's heart splintered. She knelt, bringing herself to his eye level. You're not broken, Luca. You're perfect exactly as you are. Papa says that too, but he's the only one. Well, now, Emma said, a gentle smile tracing her lips. You have me too. For the next hour, in that sterile, gilded cage, Emma committed an act of quiet revolution. She made Luca laugh. She told him silly stories, played simple games with her hands, taught him new signs that held no command, no instruction, no fear, only the pure, unadulterated joy of communication. When Luca giggled, a genuine bubbling sound at her impression of a grumpy cat, Emma felt a subtle tremor in the very foundations of the house. She was being watched. From the doorway, hidden in shadow, Adrian observed his son's transformation with a growing cold unease. In a single evening, this woman had given Luca something he'd been searching for his entire life. Normalcy, joy, the simple pleasure of being understood and accepted without fear. But in Adrian's world, happiness was a liability and affection a weakness. Emma Chen was rapidly becoming both. 20 miles across the city, in a smoke-filled warehouse, Vincent Torino ended a phone call, a satisfied, predatory smile spreading across his face. So, the boss has a new weakness, he informed his assembled crew, the words hanging heavy in the air. First, the kid. Now, some girl who can talk to him. What's the play, boss? His lieutenant asked, a low rumble of anticipation. Vincent's smile twisted into something sharp and dangerous. We take them both. 3 weeks into her gilded captivity at the Russo estate, Emma had settled into a routine that both terrified and invigorated her. Each morning, Luca waited outside her door, backpack slung over his shoulder, an eager smile on his face. Their lessons bore no resemblance to traditional education. Instead of math and history, Emma taught him how to express emotions he'd never been allowed to feel. Instead of textbooks, they created stories with their hands about brave knights and talking animals. Most importantly, she taught him that his thoughts and feelings mattered, a truth no one had ever bothered to impart before. Today, we're going to learn about feelings, Emma signed, as they sat in the mansion's vast library, surrounded by dark, leather-bound tomes that had likely not been touched in decades. I know feelings, Luca signed back, his small hands moving deftly, happy, scared. Those are good starts. But what about frustrated, excited, proud? Emma demonstrated each sign, watching Luca's eyes widen with recognition. I feel frustrated when Mrs. Castellano runs away when I try to ask for cookies. He signed eagerly. And excited when you teach me new words. His small face, usually animated, scrunched. "Papa," Luca signed, his brow furrowed in a way that mimicked the old man's own concern. "He watches us." Emma's hands stilled over the lesson book. That quiet, unsettling presence she'd felt in the periphery of her weeks here, it echoed in Luca's words. "Your father watches us?" Luca nodded, a flicker of pure, unblemished light in the opulent, shadowed room. "Every day, from the doorway. He thinks I don't notice, but I always do." He smiles a little. A flutter, cold and quick, stirred in Emma's chest. The manners whispers, the way conversations died when Don Rosario de Luca entered. The coded deference of his crew, the rare, almost tender smiles that transformed his granite face for his son. She'd registered it all, but she hadn't dared to think. She was part of his silent surveillance. "What does his face look like when he watches?" Emma asked, the question escaping before she could cage it. Luca signed, swift and sure. "Like he's seeing something impossible. Like in the pictures when the good guy wins, even when it looked like he couldn't." That evening, the manor's heavy silence shifted, breaking around Emma in the kitchen as she prepared a late snack for Luca. From Don Rosario's private study, voices, hushed and urgent, sliced through the quiet. The oak door, a dark maw in the dim hall, was barely ajar. The Torino crew, Don Rosario, a guttural voice rumbled, "They're making damn moves." Emma froze, a jar of peanut butter halfway to the counter. The air in the vast kitchen seemed to thicken, pressing in. "Vincent Torino's been sniffing around," the voice continued, laced with a venomous respect. "Asking about your boy, his routines." Don Rosario's voice, when it came, was a razor's edge. Deadly quiet. "What kind of questions?" "His schedule, his detail, where he goes during the day." The speaker's voice dropped, a low thrum of menace. "And Don Rosario, they're asking about the girl, the one who talks to him." Emma's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the cold marble wall, straining to catch every syllable. "Vincent thinks the kid is your weakness," another voice, deeper, broke in. "He's planning a big play. Thinks if he gets to the boy, he forces your hand, takes the territory." A silence stretched, brittle and electric. Then Don Rosario's voice, a current of cold fury that prickled Emma's skin. "Let him try. Anyone who puts a hand on my son dies slowly. And the girl, boss. She isn't shielded like the boy. If Vincent's smart, he'll go after her first." Emma didn't wait for Don Rosario's response. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive quiet. She ran, her patent leather flats whispering on the cold marble, soaring up the grand staircase, 2 steps at a time. The study door was still ajar. Through the crack, she saw him, Don Rosario de Luca, a dark silhouette against the library's glowing shelves, his face a mask of carved granite as he absorbed his men's grim reports. She pushed through the door. "Emma." Don Rosario's cold calculation shattered, replaced by a flash of surprise. 2 men in dark suits, Marco and a hulking brute she didn't recognize, moved with predatory grace, stepping in front of their boss, hands instinctively drifting to concealed weaponry. "I heard," Emma gasped, her breath catching. In the kitchen, they were talking about Vincent Torino, about hurting Luca, about hurting me. The silence that followed was deafening, cold and deep. Don Rosario's gaze, sharp as broken glass, raked over her. Emma felt a primal fear, a recognition that she had just shattered an unspoken law, crossed a Rubicon into his shadowed world. "How much did you hear?" he asked, his voice low, deliberate. Enough to know Luca is in danger because of me, Emma confessed, her voice fracturing. I should leave. If my being here puts him at risk. No. The word, sharp as a switchblade, cut her off. Don Rosario moved, a fluid, dangerous grace, rounding the heavy desk until he stood inches from her. Up close, she saw the flecks of silver in his storm-gray eyes, smelled the expensive cologne, cut through with something darker gunmetal, old leather, the scent of quiet power. Vincent Torino is a dead man walking, Don Rosario stated, his voice a chilling certainty. And you? He reached out, his fingers surprisingly warm as they traced her cheekbone. Emma felt her breath catch. You just proved something I wasn't sure I could trust, that you'd risk your own skin to warn me about a threat to my son. His thumb brushed softly across her cheek, and the air crackled between them. That you'd choose us over your own freedom. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs. Could he hear it? Of course I would. Luca he's special. And you? The sentence died, unfinished and heavy in the air. Don Rosario's expression softened, a transformation Emma had never witnessed. For a fleeting moment, the dangerous maestro of an underworld empire vanished, replaced by a man who seemed almost exposed. From this moment forward, he said, his voice a low, gravelly vow that resonated with ancient, unbending law. You are under my protection. No one touches you, Emma. Not Vincent. Not anyone. The way he spoke her name sent a shiver, both of fear and something else, through her. Marco, Don Rosario commanded, his eyes never leaving Emma's. Double the security detail. Put out the word. Anyone who so much as looks at Mrs. Bellini wrong answers to me personally. As his men melted away into the shadows, Don Rosario's hand remained cupping Emma's face. In that electric moment, a stark, terrifying clarity dawned. She was no longer just Luca's teacher. She was falling for his father. 2 days after Emma's breathless warning to Don Rosario, the son, usually a distant memory in the manor, became a catalyst. Luca cooped up for weeks, his lessons confined to rooms that felt more vault than home, needed more than the sterile perfection of the De Luca estate. He needed light, fresh air, a taste of a normal kid's life, if only for an hour. Absolutely not, Don Rosario clipped, a steel-edged refusal during breakfast. He was a portrait of lethal elegance in a perfectly tailored suit, his dark hair still damp from his shower. Less Mafia boss, more CEO of a silent, deadly empire. Please, Papa, Luca signed, his small hands pleading from his vast, lonely seat at the dining table. I want to see the ducks at Lincoln Park. Emma says there's a pond where they swim. Don Rosario's gray eyes softened, as they always did for his son, but his jaw remained set, a hard line. It's not safe, kid. Not now. It could be, Emma carefully interjected, her voice quiet but firm. Heavy security. Short visit, an hour. He's 8, Don Rosario. He's never just played in a park. The words struck their target. Emma watched a flicker of guilt, a shadow of pain cross Don Rosario's chiseled features. The stark truth. His son had been robbed of something so simple, so fundamental. 1 hour, Don Rosario conceded, finally, the words forced. Full detail. And you. He aimed his gaze at Emma, a silent warning. Stay within 10 feet of Marco at all times. Luca's face ignited like the 4th of July. Lincoln Park on a Wednesday afternoon was a deceptive idyll. Quiet, peaceful, just a few joggers and dog walkers navigating the crisp October air. Emma sat on a bench, a silent sentinel, watching Luca feed breadcrumbs to a family of mallards. His small body vibrated with pure joy as the ducks paddled closer. "They're not scared of me," he signed to Emma, wonder in his quick movements. "They come right up." "Animals are smart," Emma signed back, a small smile touching her lips. "They know you have a good heart." Marco and 3 other men in dark suits formed a tight perimeter around the pond. Their eyes, cold and restless, swept the surroundings, every rustle of leaves, every distant murmur of traffic. To an outsider, they were suited bodyguards. To Emma, they were dark angels of death, their hands hovering near concealed weapons, their earpieces whispering, their faces perpetually etched with a lethal vigilance. She was so absorbed in Luca's fleeting happiness, she almost missed the jogger who passed their bench for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Almost. Emma's pulse quickened. The maintenance worker, fixing the same trash can for 20 minutes straight. The woman with the baby stroller, circling, always circling back toward them. And the black van parked across the street, windows black as pitch. "Marco," Emma called, the word a whisper. But before the bodyguard could respond, the world exploded. The jogger, his face now a mask of cold intent, whipped a pistol from his waistband, firing 3 rapid shots. Marco, a blur of dark Italian wool, dove, his own weapon already clearing leather. The maintenance worker and stroller woman, with practiced fluidity, produced automatic rifles from their innocent facades. The black van's doors burst open, disgorging 6 masked men in tactical gear. "Get down!" Marco roared, his voice ripped raw. But Emma was already moving. Luca, frozen at the pond's edge, his small face bone-white with terror, was caught in the crossfire. Emma sprinted across the grass, her only thought to reach him before the masked figures could. She tackled Luca an instant before a spray of bullets chewed through the bench where he'd been standing. Both rolled, landing behind the thick, shielding trunk of an old oak. Luca shook uncontrollably, his hands a frantic blur of terrified, undecipherable signs. "It's okay, baby," Emma whispered, pressing his face into her shoulder so he couldn't see the chaos erupting around them. "I've got you. No one's going to hurt you." Marco and his men were outnumbered, but they fought with a professional ferocity, a symphony of controlled violence. The park filled with the staccato rhythm of automatic weapons fire. Emma saw Marco take a bullet in the shoulder, still firing. Another of Don Rosario's men went down hard behind a park bench, silent. Then the screech of tires more vehicles. But these weren't reinforcements. "The kid!" someone shouted, a predatory snarl. Emma looked up. 2 masked figures, dark and menacing, flanked their position. She didn't think, she reacted. She threw herself in front of Luca just as one of the men fired. A line of fire tore across her left side as the bullet grazed her ribs. The impact spun her around. In that blur of disorientation, rough hands grabbed Luca, yanking him from her. "No!" Emma screamed, lunging forward, oblivious to the blossoming stain of blood on her shirt. "Luca!" One of the masked men backhanded her across the face. Stars exploded behind her eyes. She crashed to the ground, vision blurring. Through the haze, she saw them dragging Luca toward a black SUV, its engine snarling. The boy's terrified eyes locked on hers. A silent scream in the language of the desperate. "Help me!" Emma tried to rise, to push through the encroaching darkness. But the world tilted, her vision graying out. She crumpled to the dew-kissed grass, a growing crimson stain blooming beneath her. The last thing she registered, a cruel echo against the sudden void, was the shriek of tires stealing Luca into the night. 6 hours later, in the hushed opulence of a private hospital suite, her eyes fluttered open. The first face to pierce the fog was Adrian's, a landscape of raw grief. The man had aged a decade in half a day. His usually immaculate hair was a wild tangle. His shirt bore the dark imprint of dried blood, and his smoke-gray eyes, stripped of their usual calm, burned with a cold fury that pushed her deeper into the pillows. "They took him," she rasped, the words a jagged shard tearing at her throat. I tried to protect him, but they took him." Adrian's hand, calloused from years of silent power, trembled as it reached for her cheek. "Emma, you took a bullet for my son. You threw yourself in front of armed men without a moment's thought." His voice, usually a low growl, was barely a whisper. But it wasn't enough. Tears, hot and bitter, carved paths on her temples. "He's gone because of me. Because I wanted him to see those goddamn ducks." Her voice hardened, the raw pain sharpening into a blade. "He's gone because Vincent Torino is a dead man who just doesn't know it yet." Adrian's words dropped to a bass rumble, quieter than a scream, yet resonating with deeper menace. "I'm going to burn this city to the ground until I find my son." He rose, straightening his bespoke jacket with movements that were unnervingly precise. A man preparing for war. "And when I do, Vincent Torino will learn what happens when you touch what belongs to Adrienne Russo." Through the hospital window, the Chicago skyline bled plumes of smoke from 3 separate locations. The war, Emma knew, had begun. The warehouse reeked of iron, motor oil, and the cold tang of fear. Luca, a small, huddled form, pressed himself into a windowless corner, his wrists raw from zip ties that bit deeper with every desperate shift. A single, naked bulb swung overhead, casting grotesque dancing shadows that transformed the masked men into hulking monsters as they paced, their voices a low, guttural murmur about ransoms and territorial blood debts. Luca couldn't decipher their words, only the agitated rise and fall of their bodies, the increasing frenzy of their gestures. What truly terrified him wasn't the glint of the pistol on one man's hip, nor their dismissive contempt for his silent pleas. It was the crushing, absolute silence of his world, amplified by the chilling certainty that no one here would ever understand him. "Emma," he signed, a frantic, unseen prayer, his small hands shaping her name in the empty air. "Where are you?" Across the city, Emma was waging her own quiet war against Adrian's suffocating protection. Discharged that morning against every medical warning, the bandages across her ribs pulled tight with each breath, a constant reminder of the chaos. Adrian had ensconced her in a fortified safe house, guarded by 6 armed men with strict orders. She was not to leave. He had gravely underestimated her. "I need some air," she told Marco, one of Russo's most loyal, who stood sentinel outside her bedroom door, his arm still in a sling from the park ambush. Marco, grim with exhaustion, nodded. 5 minutes, then back inside. Emma stepped onto the small balcony, her gaze immediately snagging on the metal vanes of the fire escape snaking down the building's brick face. The guards, thorough as they were, focused on the front entrance, the elevator, the stairwells. They had overlooked the most obvious escape route, the one a wounded bird would take. 10 minutes later, adrenaline overriding the searing pain in her side, she was on the street, hailing a taxi. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked, his eyes catching the hospital bracelet, the careful, almost geriatric way she moved. "The docks. Emma said, her voice steady. And I'll double it if you don't ask questions. During the nerve-wracking ride, Emma's mind raced, sifting through every casual conversation she'd ever had with Luca about his life before her. He'd spoken of a game with his father, a secret language of emergency signs, precise gestures meant for moments when noise was betrayal. If you're ever in trouble, Luca, Adrian had taught him, use the old signs, the ones Papa taught me when I was a little wolf like you. Luca, giggling, had shown Emma some variations of ancient Italian sign language, older than ASL itself. Then it had been charming. Now it was their only hope. Emma had another weapon. 3 weeks of living with Luca had taught her to think like him. The boy was obsessed with water, always drawing boats and harbors. When afraid, he gravitated to places that whispered of safety, of escape. The labyrinthine warehouse district near Lake Michigan stretched for miles, but Emma began with the buildings nearest the water, the ones where a terrified 8-year-old might dream of a boat carrying him home. She found him on her 4th attempt. The building looked derelict, its facade scarred by time. But Emma's eyes, sharpened by desperation, caught fresh tire tracks in the dirt, the recent scatter of cigarette butts, unmarred by rain. More importantly, a fleeting shadow danced behind a second-story window, small enough to be a child. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror and hope. She studied the layout. 2 hulking figures at the front entrance, one patrolling the perimeter. She needed an entrance that wouldn't set off alarms. The loading dock on the east side offered a broken window just wide enough. Glass shards bit into her palms as she squeezed through, but she bit back any sound. Fear a cold clamp on her throat. The warehouse interior was a grim maze of stacked crates and cold, silent machinery. Emma moved like a wraith, drawn by the low thrum of voices toward the back. When she finally found the room, relief washed over her, a dizzying wave. He was alive, terrified, but alive. Emma positioned herself near a splintered gap in the crates, a perfect vantage point. 3 men, all armed, all engrossed in a phone call, taking orders from an unseen master. Boss wants the kid by midnight, one gruff voice snarled. Says if Russo doesn't cave, we send him pieces. Emma's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to focus. Luca sat against the far wall, his dark eyes darting, assessing, searching for escape routes. Even bound, even terrified, he was thinking, planning, just as his father had taught him. Moving with practiced stealth, Emma knelt where Luca could see her through the gap. She waited until the guards were deep in their conversation, then began signing the old Italian variations Luca had shown her. Little Wolf, she signed, using Adrian's pet name for his son. I'm here. Luca's eyes widened, but to his credit, he made no sound, no sudden movement. His small hands, precise despite their tremor, signed back. 3 men, 2 guns. One has keys to the car outside. They're waiting for Papa to call. Want to trade me for something? His urgency grew. Can you move quietly? Emma signed. Yes. But Emma, Luca's face distorted with a fresh wave of fear. The man with the scar is coming back. He went to check the perimeter. He'll be here soon. Emma's blood turned to ice. A 4th man, unaccounted for, and he was already on his way. When I signal, she signed to Luca, get ready to run. No matter what, you run to the water and hide. Your papa will find you. Even as her hands formed the words, a cold certainty settled. They were both going to die in this warehouse. One unarmed woman, wounded, running on a whisper of determination against 4 armed men. It didn't matter. She wouldn't let Luca face this alone. Just as Emma braced herself to create some desperate distraction, Luca's hands moved in a frantic warning. Behind you. Emma spun around, finding herself face to face with a man whose scarred visage she recognized from Adrian's security briefings. Vincent Torino himself, his pistol leveled directly at her head. Well, well, Vincent drawled, a chilling smile playing on his lips. Looks like Adrian Russo's little girlfriend came to play hero. His scarred face twisted into a mask of cruel satisfaction, the gun a cold extension of his will. I was expecting Adrian himself, crashing through the door like some movie hero. Instead, I get his son's babysitter. Emma forced herself to meet his gaze, her knees threatening to buckle. Let the boy go, Vincent. Your fight is with Adrian, not with an 8-year-old. Oh, but you're wrong about that, sweetheart. Vincent purred, stepping closer. Through the gap in the crates, Emma saw Luca watching, wide-eyed, terrified. The boy is the key to everything. Adrian's weakness, his soft spot. Vincent's eyes flicked to Emma, a predatory gleam, though it seems he's developed another one. From inside the room, one of Vincent's men shouted, "Boss, we got movement on the perimeter, multiple vehicles coming in fast." Vincent's smile widened, devoid of warmth. Right on schedule. Seems Papa Bear found our little hideaway after all. He pressed the cold metal of the gun against Emma's temple. Here's how this goes, sweetheart. You're going to walk into that room, nice and slow, and then we're all going to wait for Adrian to come save his precious family. Emma's mind raced as Vincent prodded her toward Luca's holding room. Through the grime-streaked windows, she could hear the growing rumble of engines, a wave of vehicles approaching at speed. Desperate hope surged through her, even as Vincent's gun remained a cold anchor at her temple. But it was the sound that followed, a sharp, clean crack of sniper fire from somewhere outside the warehouse, that finally, gloriously, made Vincent's confident smile falter. "What the hell was that, Enzo?" The shout ripped through the warehouse, a raw nerve exposed in the sudden chaos. "Franco isn't answering on radio." Another voice cut in, laced with fear. "Neither is Nico at the main gate." Vincent, the butcher. DeSantis gripped Emma tighter, his knuckles white against her arm. "Doesn't matter. We still have the kid, and her. Russo won't risk them." But as the words left his lips, the front wall of the warehouse detonated, a concussive blast that stole the air, shrapnel screaming across the concrete floor. Through the roiling smoke and dust, dark figures spilled through the breach, moving with the cold, practiced rhythm of a professional hit squad. Muzzle flashes stitched a deadly tapestry across the gloom, the controlled bursts of automatic fire systematically clearing the building. Then he appeared. Not a man anymore, but a force of nature. Adrian Russo, cutting through the smoke like an avenging spirit. The polished businessman, the tailored suits, all gone. This was Russo in his element, clad in tactical black, a military-grade rifle cradled in his hands. His storm-gray eyes burned with a glacial fury that could melt steel. Every movement was lethal, calculated. He stalked through the carnage like death himself. DeSantis, Russo's voice sliced clean through the pandemonium, a blade in the throat. "I'm here for my son. Send him out, and maybe I let you walk." DeSantis dragged Emma further into the makeshift cell where young Luca was held. "You're in no position to make demands, Russo," he roared, his remaining crew scrambling for cover behind overturned crates and rusty machinery. "I've got your boy and your woman. One wrong move, and they both go down." Russo materialized in the doorway, a nightmare made flesh, his weapon fixed on DeSantis. "Let them go, Vincent. I'll make it quick." DeSantis barked a laugh, pressing his pistol harder against Emma's temple. "You think you scare me, Russo? You really think?" It was then Emma saw her flickering chance. Just as DeSantis's gaze flickered to Russo, she drove her elbow into his ribs, a desperate, gut-wrenching blow. She dove, wrapping her body around the trembling Luca, a human shield, as the warehouse erupted around them. DeSantis's men opened fire, but Russo was already gone, melting into cover. His own crew, unseen, outflanked the desperate holdouts. The sound was deafening, a symphony of destruction. Automatic weapons railed, bullets tore through metal, splintered wood. Emma pressed Luca's face into her shoulder, a small, fragile barrier against the storm. His small hands clawed at her, his body trembling. "I've got you, baby," she whispered into his ear, the words lost in the thunder. "It's going to be okay." A bullet hissed past her ear, hot breath of death, burying itself in the concrete wall inches behind her head. Another shattered a wooden crate, shrapnel spitting just beyond their huddled forms. Emma held tight, absorbing the impact as debris rained down on her back and shoulders, a silent testament to the fragile shield she now was. The firefight felt eternal, stretched into an agonizing eternity, but in reality, it was over in less than 2 minutes. Russo's men were surgeons of violence, DeSantis's street thugs with inflated egos and clumsy aim. One by one, they fell, until only DeSantis remained, wounded and cornered behind a toppled table. "It's over, Vincent." Russo's voice was deadly calm now, cold as a tomb, a quiet menace in the sudden stillness. "Come out! Go to hell, Russo!" DeSantis snarled back, but the fear was a raw, exposed wound in his voice. What happened next would forever be etched into Emma's memory. Russo stepped into the open, utterly exposed, his weapon lowered. For a gut-wrenching second, Emma thought he had lost his mind. DeSantis still had a gun. He was still a threat. But then she saw the Arctic calculation in Russo's eyes, the lethal confidence in his stance. DeSantis took the bait. He rose, triumph flashing across his scarred face, his gun coming up. Russo was faster. A single, precise shot, a final stark sound. DeSantis crumpled, his weapon clattering harmlessly away, swallowed by the silence. And in that sudden, profound quiet, Russo's mask finally shattered. His hands were shaking as he ran to them, falling to his knees beside Emma and Luca. "Luca, Emma, are you hurt?" His voice cracked, a fragile thing, as he reached for his son. "Did they hurt you, Papa?" Luca signed, launching himself into his father's embrace. "Emma saved me. She jumped in front of the bullets." Russo's storm-gray eyes found Emma's. What she saw there stole her breath. Not the cold warlord, not the calculating killer, but a father who had nearly lost everything. "You could have died," he whispered, his hand gently touching the cuts on her face. "So could he," Emma whispered back. In that dust-choked warehouse, surrounded by the remnants of violence Emma knew, this man would burn the world to keep his family safe. The question that lingered, a silent tremor in her heart, was, when had she started to think of herself as part of that family? The Russo mansion had never felt more like home than in the soft, golden light of dawn 3 days after the warehouse. Emma sat curled in the library's window seat, watching Luca play in the meticulously manicured garden, watched over by a silent, vigilant retinue of guards. The boy was different now, not broken, but stronger, confident, as if understanding, finally, that he was worth fighting for. Emma's ribs still ached from the impact of splintered wood and flying bullets, a constant, dull throb. But seeing Luca's simple joy made every bruise a badge of honor. He was trying to teach one of the younger guards sign language, his small hands moving with patient enthusiasm as the burly man fumbled through the alphabet. He's never done that before. Emma turned. Adrien Rousseau stood in the doorway, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. The razor-sharp suits were gone, replaced by dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that softened the hard edges of his power. His gray eyes held a new warmth. "Done what?" Emma asked softly. Rousseau moved into the room, easing into the leather armchair opposite her. For 8 years, signing was something private between us. His secret language. No one else understood it. He gestured towards the window, where Luca was now giggling at the guard's clumsy attempts to sign, "Thank you." Now he wants to share it with the world. Emma felt a tightness in her throat. He's not hiding anymore. No, Rousseau agreed quietly. He's not. His gaze shifted from his son to Emma, studying her with an intensity that quickened her pulse. "Do you know what you've given him, Emma?" "I don't know what you mean." Rousseau leaned forward, elbows on his knees, searching for the right words. "For 8 years, I watched my son vanish a little more each day. He was there, breathing, alive. But he was fading, like a ghost. No one saw him. No one heard him. No one tried to understand who he truly was beneath the fear." Emma's heart ached at the raw pain in his voice. "I learned sign language the day he was born," Rousseau continued, "bought every book, hired every teacher. Our hands cramped with practice. But I could only give him words, Emma. You gave him something far more precious." "What's that?" "A voice." Rousseau's voice broke. "You gave my son a voice, in a world that had decided he was invisible. You made him real again." Tears blurred Emma's vision as she watched this formidable, dangerous man grapple with emotions he likely kept locked away. "Adrien," she began, standing and moving to the window to look at Luca. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully, because once I ask it, there's no going back." Emma's heart began to pound, a frantic rhythm. "Okay." Rousseau turned to face her, and she was stunned to see vulnerability etched across his face. This wasn't the boss or the calculated businessman. This was a father who had nearly lost everything. "Stay," he said simply. "Not as Luca's tutor. Not as someone I'm protecting because you helped us." He struggled for a moment, then forced the words out. "Stay. As family, Emma. Real family. Mine and his." The words hung in the air, fragile and precious, terrifying. "I know what my world is," Rousseau continued, when Emma didn't immediately respond. "I know what I am, what I've done. I know I'm asking you to tether yourself to something dangerous and dark and complicated." His voice dropped to a barely audible whisper. "But Emma, you're the missing piece we didn't even know we needed. You make us whole." Emma stood slowly, her body trembling as she moved towards him. "Adrien, are you asking me to?" "I'm asking you to marry me," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm asking you to be Luca's mother and my wife, and the heart of whatever kind of family we can build together. I'm asking you to take all of us, the good, the bad, the dangerous, and let us be yours. Emma's breath caught. Through the window, Luca had stopped his lesson, watching them intently, his dark eyes bright with an unspoken hope. Yes, she whispered, and the word felt like coming home. Russo's expression transformed, relief and joy, and something profoundly deeper flooding his face. He stepped forward, cupping her face in his hands, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, as if he still couldn't believe she was real. "Are you sure?" he murmured. "Once you're part of this family, Emma, I'll never let you go." "I don't want you to," she whispered back. The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, brimming with promises and a fierce, fragile hope, the quiet genesis of something beautiful. The library doors, heavy with carved oak and the dust of forgotten histories, burst inward, sending a shockwave through the hushed room. It was little Enzo, a whirlwind of youthful abandon, his face bright with a feverish excitement that belied his years. His hands, small but quick, danced in the air between them, a flurry of urgent signs. "Are you getting married?" he asked, his gaze darting between Valentina and Silvio. "Will we be a real family?" Valentina knelt, her movements deliberate, her own hands a calm counterpoint to Enzo's youthful flurry. "If that's what you want, Principino," she signed back, her eyes holding his. Enzo's next signs froze them both, locking them in a tableau of silent disbelief. His small fingers pointed first to Valentina. "Mom," then, with the unwavering conviction of a child, he turned to Silvio, his face radiant with a joy that cut through the hardened shell of the man. "Dad." A quiet breath escaped Enzo as he finished. "I have a mom and a dad now, a real family." In that moment, the iron mask Silvio Romano wore, the one that had faced down empires and bathed in the blood of rivals, shattered. He sank to his knees, the polished mahogany floor cold against his bespoke suit, and pulled both Valentina and Enzo into his arms. He held them with a desperate ferocity, as if they were fragile glass that might shatter or smoke that might dissipate into the morning light. For the first time in his brutal, calculated life, Silvio Romano a name whispered in fear and respect. A man who commanded an empire built on silent threats and sudden violence felt something akin to peace. Beyond the leaded windows of the library, the first rays of the dawn, golden and deceptively innocent, painted the ancient walls of the estate, and for once, the fortress felt like what it had always been meant to be, a tomb